He stood like a rock among the mighty, his name whispered through the ranks of David's warriors with reverence and awe. Azmaveth, of Baaram, a fierce fighter whose blade never wavered and whose loyalty ran deeper than steel. He was not born into fame. Baaram, his hometown, was a small village nestled among the hills of Benjamin, often overlooked, a place where shepherds roamed and time seemed to pause. But the fields of Baaram raised men with grit in their blood and fire in their bones. And Azmaveth was one of them. By the time he joined David's ranks, the young shepherd-turned-warlord had already become a fugitive king in waiting. Saul, once the anointed king of Israel, now hunted David like a wild animal. And around David gathered the broken, the bold, and the brave, men who believed not just in a cause, but in a covenant. Azmaveth was one of David's mighty men. The Chronicles record his name among the elite, the few who stood shoulder to shoulder with the future king when the odds were impossible and death was always near. These were not just soldiers. They were legends in the making. Each one had a story of valor that could fill scrolls. Azmaveth's name is listed among them, not for speaking many words, but for fighting many battles. He was the kind of warrior who moved like wind through the battlefield, silent, fast, precise. His sword didn't speak, but it testified. In ambushes, in midnight raids, in narrow mountain passes, Azmaveth fought not for glory, but for God's chosen. They say he fought with his eyes fixed, not on crowns, but on covenant. He saw what others couldn't, a king anointed by the prophet Samuel, a man after God's own heart, a leader who wept and worshipped and never let the sword harden his soul. David inspired men like Azmaveth to rise beyond themselves. In the caves of Adullam, when hunger gnawed and hope flickered, Azmaveth remained. When the Philistines pushed forward and Israel trembled, Azmaveth stood his ground. When Saul fell and David finally wore the crown, Azmaveth did not change. His loyalty was never to power, but to purpose. The scriptures don't tell us the number of men he slew or the wounds he bore. But the fact that his name lives in the list of the mighty tells us everything. He was faithful. He was fearless. He was one of the few who helped turn a fugitive into a king, and a band of outcasts into a nation. And so, Azmaveth's legacy is not buried beneath centuries of dust. It rides on every word of courage, every stand for righteousness, every battle fought not for self, but for something greater. His sword rests now. His breath has long since stilled. But in the chronicles of heaven and earth, he remains, Azmaveth of Baaram, a warrior of the king.